So let's take a look at what happened to a person who bought the MLS price in 2005, a $256,000 unit. Let's take a look at where they were. Well, there's income distributions in Calgary in 2005, and you can see entry-level incomes, 25 to 34, about $90,000 a year in those households. 35 to 44, 45 to 54, up to $152,000 in average income. Got the income, got the equity, want a new house. What stops you? So there's the driver in your market. Let's take that typical 256 price. Let's take 15% equity. Why did I take 15% equity? Well, some people take 5. Some people take 25. I haven't met this lovely couple, so I don't know what they actually did. So I took halfway between 5 and 25. It could be any number you want. It makes no difference to the analysis. That meant they had a $218,000 mortgage, a 25-year AM. I had a 1-year term, so they roll over every year and they keep their payments constant, just so the math's doable. 5-year rate was what the rates were when they bought. They had to have a $57,000 annual income, which puts them in the entry stage market. In 2005, the MLS price was purchasable by the average entrant into the market. Now, by taking the average price, if you want to have discussion of housing affordability, and I think it's a valid discussion, it's not the average price. The first-time purchase, expecting the first-time purchaser to buy the average house is like expecting the guy you just hired in the mailroom to get an executive salary. So when I look at the average, given that it's an average in the skewed distribution, more than half the units were cheaper than that. In terms of condo, almost 80% were cheaper than that. But in terms of single detached, you had 30% cheaper than that. So there was lots of stuff below the average for people who didn't have that income. But the starter could buy that average. If I take a look at the income distribution of Calgary in that year, in terms of the overall market, 2/3 of the market could afford to buy that, had the income to buy that unit, and particularly in the older age groups, up to 80% of them had the income to buy that. So lots of income, there is an income distribution, but that was absolutely purchasable by your entry-level purchaser. So this person bought with a $218,000 mortgage. So let's take a look at what happened to that person. This is saying nothing changed, you just paid off the mortgage. So you had an initial mortgage, initial down payment of $38,000, and your interest rates didn't change, your income didn't change, nothing changed. You just built up equity. Housing prices didn't change. Just paid down the debt. Well, 5 years later, your housing prices, in terms of what this person could go out and buy, would have gone up 10% simply by virtue of the leverage of them paying down their debt. So to the extent that people build up equity by paying down debt, we should expect housing prices to go up at 2% a year. So right at the basis of housing markets, the forced savings of loan amortization means in the future, people, all other things equal, are going to be able to buy more expensive housing. So we know that that leverage, that the person who could buy a $256,000 unit in 2005 without any change could buy a $210,000 unit just because they built up equity. Now, what actually happened there? Well, first of all, interest rates went up. Every time somebody tells me that interest rates going up are going to kill the market, I want to barf. Because interest rates in Calgary went up 2% between 2005 and 2007, and housing prices went up, not down. So I'm not worried about interest rates because interest rates aren't the only thing that affects that, like equity does and other stuff. So there's what happened to interest rates. So if we go back to our first-time purchaser, whoa, Bruce, back up. I have a name for my computer. First of all, it's Australian, so it's Bruce. First of all, because interest rates went up with that 1-year rollover, they in fact couldn't build up as much equity, but they still could build up some. But interest rates going up and then dropping down meant even if their income didn't go up because interest rates fell, you get a 21% increase in prices just because interest rates fell. Now this drives everybody to say, oh yeah, but you see when interest rates go up, exactly the opposite is going to happen. Except what else happened during this period when interest rates went up? Well, incomes went up. In 2006 and 2007, average wages in the province of Alberta went up 17%. So that incomes had an effect on that as well. And why they went up? Well, first of all, the overall increase was an average of 5.1% increase in average weekly earnings in Alberta. But also those young people went from being 25 to 34 to 35 to 44, and because of the life cycle of how your income goes up over your career, their incomes went up because they were older. So combined, we get this income going from $57,000 to $82,000 as they went from 25 to 34 to 35 to 39 years of age. Interest rates dropped, so a 40% increase in income and a 30% drop in interest rates. Well, wouldn't you expect housing prices to go up? This isn't a bubble. This isn't an overheated market. This is people whose incomes are going up, and people like housing, so they spend on housing. So let's take a look and see what happened to people's actual mortgage ability in terms of not only the falling interest rates, but the rising incomes. And all other things equal, a family that bought in 2005 could have gone out without any growth in the market whatsoever, no growth in prices, could have gone out and bought a $417,000 house. Their purchasing power went up by 62%. So that's what happened to the purchasing power. No discussion of market growth or anything else. So what do you think happened to the market during this time period? How much do you think the market went up? Well, it went up 60%. Gee, folks, demand matters in a market. There's no mystery here. Now, you say, yeah, sure, you're okay. It's like a stopped clock. It's right every 12 or 24 hours because I hit it here and here, but I didn't hit it here. Why didn't it work in 2006, 2007, 2008? Well, because the 2005 purchaser wasn't back in the market the next year. People actually stay for a while. So what we want to know is who was in the market who'd owned for about 10 to 15 years who would be back in the market. So let's take a look at the people who bought in Calgary. Oh, so roll in the MLS average. If they take the equity gain from the market, your housing prices here should have actually gone up 122%, which is my question. Why didn't prices go up more rather than they're high? They're high. Sounds like my high school. It's a good thing the mic doesn't work, isn't it? So let's go back to the people who bought in 1995 for $135,000 a year, $135,000 price. Okay, so $135,000 house, there's the income distribution in 1995. Gee, $42,000, even at an 8.4% interest rate, annual income of $42,000, again, in the reach of your starter housing market. Okay, what happened during that time period? Well, for those people who were in 1995, bought in the 25 to 34 age group, they're now 45 to 49, and their incomes have gone from $42,000 to $129,000. And now for you, anybody here in this room who's 40 to 49 years of age, sit down and dig out your 1996 tax return. See what happened to your income, your household income. I guarantee it's going to match this very well. So your incomes have gone up, and interest rates went from 8.4 to 3.5. So if we put those suckers together, income is a threefold increase. Rates are a 60% drop. Do you think housing prices should have gone up a little? Okay, so these people are back in the market. They've owned 10 to 15 years. It's time for the next place. We take what they did in terms of paying off the debt, what their actual debt serviceability is in terms of their current income and current interest rates, and they could have gone out and bought a $688,000 house, but the MLS only went up to $409,000. People have a lot of equity. This is me. I bought a $54,000 house with a $26,000 income in Point Grey in 1974. I can go out and buy Florida. But my income is way more than $26,000 a year. So this is the underlying driver in your market. Now, remember, there's no single explanation. But this explanation has to be part of the narrative. So these people should have actually gone out and bought a $1 million house. Why didn't they? Because they don't want the $1 million house. They want other things, but they are moving up in the market, and we saw that from the CMHC data. Let's take a look at the last of those three big purchaser groups we saw at the beginning. The people who bought in 1985 with an income of $30,000, buying the MLS average. What happened to them? Well, their incomes went from $30,000 to $125,000. They went from a 10% interest rate to a 3.5% interest rates. So we've got a fourfold increase in income, a 66% drop in rates. They could have bought a $1 million house. They didn't. But all that happened in the MLS is the MLS went up a modest 60%. So if you're going to discuss housing markets and affordability, do so. But 70% of your market is rolling equity rather than doing it on incomes. Income isn't the relative variable. Housing prices, your market's absolutely predictable. It's absolutely sustainable. You had a jump during a period of time when Alberta was in an economic boom, but all that jump did was simply move forward an increase that was going to happen anyhow. So what we want to know now, why are things different in the United States? I love this way of reasoning. Luongo was the Olympic goalie, therefore Vancouver Canucks should win the Stanley Cup. What happened somewhere else some other time applies here, and we just have to wait. So why is the Calgary not United States? And what's going to happen in the future? Where are prices going to go? Why are we so different in the United States? Go on forever, but it's simply that mortgage lending in the United States went from Main Street to Wall Street. Traditionally, mortgage lending was locally administered. People actually looked and knew the lender. You take a look at the predatory lending in the United States, loan-to-value ratios of 400%, ninja loans, liar loans, non-AMs, fraudulent loans. All of that created an economic meltdown. Then we had robo-signing, which means now you don't know when you buy a property that's being foreclosed on or not, or whether the title's valid, because you don't know if it was legally foreclosed. So it introduces another level. And now there's a general acceptance in parts of the AREF, the American Association of Retired Persons, says, well, you know, if you're having trouble handling your mortgage, don't want to spend your life savings on it, just default. Well, it may be a good personal strategy, but you want to screw up a housing market. Roll this into it. What's the scale of this? This is one company who was sentenced last Friday. They did $20 billion in mortgage sales annually. $100 billion in sales over a 5-year period. We don't know how many of them are fraudulent loans, that there's no security whatsoever. This is 1 out of 20. How about $2 trillion worth of questionable loans? It didn't happen here because our lending has always remained Main Street lending. We don't have a high securitization. Our country is too diverse. We don't have the scale. The Alberta Treasury Branch and those kinds of people are also involved in lending. And it's really interesting to have serious underwriters like the Treasury Branch or credit unions or insured loans, because they rein in the other guys. They say, no, that's value's not supportable, so the other guys can't get carried away with it. So it didn't happen here. It won't happen here. There's the meltdown in the United States with 6% of prime fixed loans in arrears, 30% of the subprime ARMs in arrears. There's everybody, like when I Google Calgary real estate, you always get this, oh, foreclosure collapse. Gee, you're at 0.83%. 8 in 1,000 loans in Alberta are 3 months or more in arrears, and that's a cumulative measure. So once you get in there, you don't get out for a long time. Everybody says, well, look at it, that's so much higher than it was in 2007. Yeah, it's so much higher than it was in 2007, because in 2007, your unemployment rate was 2.7%. An unsustainably low unemployment rate with wages skyrocketing. You had people in that period of time working who shouldn't be.